Senator Bernie Sanders on the line with us. Bernie, did you want to give out that 800 number for people in Vermont looking to contact your office for assistance with the flood again?
It's 1-800-339-9834, and that's if our office can be of any help for people who are struggling through the flood and having problems. That's only a Vermont number for people in Vermont.
Okay, and I'm assuming that's on your website at sanders.senate.gov?
Yes, it sure is.
Okay, great. All right, Michael in Monroe, North Carolina, you are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, Bernie. We need 67 more senators just like you. I've got a question about Social Security and and I know Tom agrees with this, but removing the cap from $106,700 and just removing it completely, will that solve the Social Security problem? If so, how come that isn't brought up over and over again on mainstream media and in the Senate? Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. Well, let me just tell you this. The answer is yes to your question. Lifting the cap will solve the problem for 75 years. It is not talked about terribly often on Main Street media, where there is an enormous amount of disinformation. And thirdly, we are going to be introducing next week legislation to do just that, starting at $250,000. You don't have to start at 106. If you started at 250,000, you will in fact solve the problem for 75 years. And here's the issue. Let me say it again, because Social Security continues to be a target not only for right-wing extremists like Governor Perry, who came up with his brilliant assertion that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme, but for other people who simply want to cut benefits for Social Security beneficiaries or ultimately privatize it. Facts again. Social Security, according to a recent report from the CBO, has a $2.5 trillion surplus. Social Security can pay out every benefit owed to every eligible American for the next 27 years. Social Security, because it's funded by the payroll tax, has not contributed one nickel to the deficit, should not be seen as a problem related to deficit reduction. So the question is, how do you make it strong for 75 years rather than the 27 years? And by the way, at the end of 27 years, it will pay out 80% of the benefits owed to eligible Americans. And the one way, as Michael indicates, to solve that problem is to lift the cap on taxable income above $250,000. You do that, we're going to introduce that bill. As of now, I believe we have 4 co-sponsors. We're trying to get a few more, and we'll probably introduce it next week.
Ronald in Los Angeles, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hello?
Ronald, you're on the air.
Yes, I would like to ask Senator Sanders a question. How would you go about getting a bill passed through the Republican House since they're so hostile to any type of legislation whatsoever? How would you do it, Senator?
Ronald, thank you for the question, and it's a good question. Clearly, we have a Republican Party today which has moved very, very far to the right. They take their orders from the very wealthiest people in this country and the largest corporations and Tea Party folks who are on the extreme right. I think the way to get significant legislation passed, such as a major jobs bill, is to take the case to the American people, build a very strong grassroots movement, and give the Republicans, basically make them an offer that they can't refuse. And that is when thousands of people from your congressional district call in and say, you know what, it is much more important that we have decent paying jobs in our community than giving tax breaks to millionaires or billionaires. And when lots of people get organized, go to town meetings, make those phone calls, you begin to put pressure on Republicans who are politicians. They have got to get reelected. We talked a moment ago about trade agreements. If people in districts call up their senators and their members of House and say, excuse me, we have lost millions of jobs because of these disastrous trade agreements that have enabled corporations to shut down in America, move to China, Vietnam, Mexico, wherever. Stop it. Don't vote for these agreements anymore, or you're not going to get reelected. So to answer Ronald's question, I'm an old-fashioned guy in that respect. I think you build grassroots activism, you have people put pressure on their elected officials, and then the elected officials have a choice. If they want to get reelected, they're going to have to start listening to ordinary people rather than to their campaign contributors.
Reginald in Houston, Texas. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hello, Senator Bernie. Senator Bernie.
Yes, you're on.
Hey, sir. Reginald Moore. This is Reginald here. Yes, I'm calling. It's been 3 years since the senior citizens have got that on Social Security. People on Social Security have gotten a raise. It's the first time since the creation, since Roosevelt done that. And I'm concerned going into this session here. I haven't heard anything about them getting a raise, a cost of living raise. These are the people who were, in the civil rights movement in the 30s and the 40s. Now they're elderly, widowed, and we have money that we could pay back on the T-bills that's borrowed against Social Security that could help fund that and make sure they get that. Here in Texas, Governor Perry, we were trying to get electronic verification to validate the Social Security verification, and they had the lobbyists and the home builders who lobbied against this in our Senate, and he approved. They went along with it to keep the electronic verification because the jobs are coming here, but the developers and the contractors are using illegal labor because the labor is cheaper when they go that way. Can we validate that and get that electronic verification, make sure that the jobs are going to the citizens and not to pay at the bottom line and exploiting illegal immigrants?
Okay, as I heard you, Reginald, you asked two questions, and the second one is verification of workers to make sure that they are American citizens, and I support that. I think that that's right. The second issue you talked about is Social Security COLAs. What I would tell you, Reginald, you're right. In the last 2 years, people on Social Security haven't gotten any COLA whatsoever, despite the fact that prescription drug costs and healthcare costs in general have gone up very significantly, which impacts mostly senior citizens. What I want to tell you, Reginald, is if you can believe this, there are people here in Washington, and I'm afraid maybe even the president, who think that the current COLA formulation is too generous. And they want to move toward what is called a chained CPI, reformulating COLAs, which would lower them. And that would mean in the next 10 years, $560 less for somebody who would be 75, and 20 years from now, $1,000 a year less for somebody who would be 85. So, Reginald, the goal is to create a new formula which effectively determines inflation for seniors. I think the current formula is inadequate. On the other hand, there are those who think it's too generous. Lastly, I suspect, we're not sure about this, there'll be an announcement fairly soon. There probably will be a Social Security COLA this year. My guess is it'll be pretty minimal.
Lily in Binghamton, New York. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yes, this is Lily. I'd like to ask Senator Sanders, when are we going to get the Republicans to finally start cutting some of the Defense Department budget? We spent $5 trillion. They've increased it to $5 trillion on defense. There's bases, old bases, that we have open up in Europe and in Asia. We could close some of them bases down, and especially in Naples in Italy. We're a military family. We've been to these bases all over Europe. There's all kinds of little bases that could be closed. They're useless. And we could use the other bigger bases that we have. It's time to start cutting some of the defense spending.
Lily, I agree with you. We have tripled defense spending since 1997. Right now, we're engaged in a war in Iraq and a war in Afghanistan, costing us about $160 billion a year. And your point is, we are defending countries all over the world who are more than able to defend themselves, as we end up spending more money on the military than the rest of the world combined. So, Lily, your point is well taken. Unfortunately, we have Republicans right now who say, cut Social Security, cut Medicare, cut Medicaid, cut education. Oh, defense spending? No, we want to raise that. So we have our work cut out. But, Lily, I think you're absolutely right.
Dan in Washington, D.C. You're on the air with Senator Sanders. Minute to the break, by the way.
Senator, I'm very troubled by President Obama going in 1 year from a temporary cut in the payroll tax to saying last night that full funding of Social Security would be a tax increase on the middle class. If his proposal to defund Social Security goes forward, would you still be able to say that Social Security is funded in the way it is and that it has not contributed to the national debt, as you said a couple of minutes ago?
Dan, that is an excellent question. I touched on that a few minutes earlier. I opposed the so-called payroll tax holiday last year. I am very concerned about continuing it this year because if you do it 2 years in a row, then it becomes permanent. And if you cut it in half, it means instead of contributing 6.2% of income, people are contributing 3.1. That means you're diverting tens and tens of billions of dollars into the Social Security Trust Fund. What the president says, as I mentioned earlier, is don't worry, we're going to repay this from the federal treasury. Well, when you got a $14 trillion national debt, I have my doubts. So I think, Dan, the point you're raising is one that has to be made over and over again.
It's 45 minutes past the hour on the Thom Hartmann Program. Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator Sanders on the line with us. Corky in Rochester, New York, watching us on Free Speech TV. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yes, Mr. Sanders, thank you very much for your work on Social Security. It's not a Ponzi scheme. It's an insurance policy. You got to get that through people's heads. It's an insurance policy. And the government, Washington, had stolen $2.5 trillion in insurance premiums from the Social Security Fund. Those are premiums. You got to get that through their head. And I wouldn't discuss anything with the Republicans on Social Security until the $2.5 trillion in premiums that were taken are paid back. Now they want to come up with individual accounts. All that's telling me is that you're irresponsible with my money, that you can't be trusted to leave it alone in a fund. You've got to have it put in somebody's name so you can't touch it. This is absolutely ridiculous for adult people to be talking this way.
Well, let me just say this. The main opposition to Social Security, which has existed for decades, is precisely because Social Security is a government program that has worked enormously effectively. It has done pretty much what it was designed to do when it was developed during the 30s. Before Social Security, 50% of seniors were living in poverty. People didn't have enough money to go to the doctor, didn't have enough money for housing, didn't have enough money for basic needs. Today, while poverty among seniors is too high and growing, that number is 10%. So we've gone from 50% poverty for seniors down to 10%, not to mention that we're taking care of and helping people with disabilities and widows and orphans. So we have made real progress. And the point that I want to make is that all of this is done in a pretty cost-effective administrative way. Minimal amounts of money to administer the program. Now, Corky, what the individual accounts are about is Wall Street's effort. If you destroy Social Security, where are people going to get their retirement benefits? They're going to go to Wall Street. And there are billions and billions of dollars to be made once individuals have to go to Wall Street. So the bottom line is, you're right. Social Security is not an investment program. It is an insurance program. And for 75 years, it has paid out every benefit owed to every eligible American in good times and bad, and has done that in a cost-effective way. So in my view, Social Security has been an extraordinary success with minimal changes, i.e. lifting the cap on people with incomes over $250,000 a year. Social Security will be there for the next 75 years. And even reforming the COLA, the cost of living adjustment. That's right. That's another issue that we have to deal with as well.
Very easily handle that. We've got about 30 seconds, I think, before the break.
What that's about is how you determine inflation is tricky. Inflation, if I'm an 18-year-old kid, my spending habits are different than if I'm an 85-year-old. If I'm 85 years old, I'm by and large spending money on health care. If I'm 18, I'm not. The truth is that for older people, costs are going up. If you're 18, that may not be the case. We have to segregate that index to reflect what older people are purchasing.
Right. iPods are getting cheaper and food is getting more expensive. Our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders answering your questions. Rachel in Phillipsburg, New Jersey. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hello, Senator Sanders. First, thank you for all you do. And my concern regards electronic voting vis-a-vis paper ballots. Do you know of any measure that will be introduced in either the House or Senate to return to paper voting? I know I lived in Europe for a while, and I'm fairly certain that most European countries have gone back to paper ballots. I know Ireland did. They had a very expensive electronic voting system ready to be implemented, and then they decided just to keep the paper system. And my concern stems from the fact that I really believe that the more people that vote against Republicans, as the Republicans see all these people voting against them, they're going to manipulate the system, manipulate computers' voting systems, and I'm just very concerned about that.
Well, I know Thom has done a lot of work on that, so I'm going to give the mic over to Thom. But I will tell you this. One area, Rachel, that we are going to be involved in is the outrageous attacks on voting rights that are taking place in many of these right-wing states, where it is as clear as the noses on our faces that what the officials there are trying to do is make it harder and harder for low-income people, for people of color, for people who don't own automobiles, for people who don't have fancy IDs to be able to vote. And they're doing this under the guise of voter fraud, which thankfully in this country is a virtually non-existent problem, and it has to be dealt with. But to discriminate and to make it harder for lower-income people to vote is an outrage and something we are going to address. In terms of paper ballots, I agree. I mean, I think, interestingly enough, I live an hour away from the Canadian border, and we watch the Canadian elections. They get their election results in quite quickly. There's never any great debates about the accuracy of them, and I think that they do that virtually all with paper. Is that right, Thom?
Yes. And my objection to the machines is not, I mean, I have some concerns about them, but my big objection is this is the ultimate commons. I mean, we talk about our parks as the commons and the schools as the commons. The ultimate commons is the vote, and we shouldn't be handing it over to private for-profit corporations. That's my...
And I share that.
Yeah, okay. Harvey in Harvin or Harvey in L.A.?
Harvin.
Harvin, you are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Thank you for taking my call, Senator. I think more should be made of the fact that 240 bills were passed by the Nancy Pelosi House, and she was vilified all the time by the Republicans, and none of it was passed either by because of the 60% requirement in the Senate. None of those bills were passed. They were either filibustered or stopped by one senator, and I want to know what is going to be done to change that 60% majority. Even if the Democrats win the House and the Senate, this 60% is an awful tough barrier to get past, to get anything done.
Well, Harvin, you're right. It's certainly, as a victim of that, and a number of instances, getting 60 votes is very, very hard. What I can tell you is that from an historical perspective, the 60-vote threshold in the past was used very, very rarely. I mean, what comes to mind in a negative way was the use of the filibuster and the extra majority on the part of segregationists that wanted to prevent civil rights legislation. But from an historical point of view, most legislation in the Senate was passed with 51 votes. What we have seen since Obama has been elected is an unprecedented use of the filibuster and the 60-vote threshold. And I think that's something that we have to deal with now. And there is work going on trying to figure it out. Minority rights have got to be protected, but they should not be abused, and they clearly are.
Becky in Maple Creek, you're on, and thanks for listening to KGOE. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I was listening to bits and pieces of the speech last night, and the president made a comment about only having regulations that protect the worker. And I wanted some reassurance that this isn't a sign that the EPA is going to be attacked or defanged, and I wanted our government to understand that the citizenry is also concerned about protecting the environment.
Right. Well, I think that's what the president was implying. That I remember he used the word making sure that kids don't get exposed to mercury. The good news, I mean, you're absolutely right. We live in a society where there are all kinds of chemicals out there that consumers need to be protected from, pesticides out there. We have serious problems with air and water pollution that citizens need to be protected from. And unfortunately, and I have to say this, we have seen in recent months some real retreats with regard to the EPA. Major cuts have already been taking place, and I fear very much that as this super committee does its work, the EPA will be on the chopping block. So your call is exactly right. We want to make sure that our kids are drinking clean water, eating good food, the air we're breathing is healthy, and we have got to maintain strong presence of the EPA and protecting those areas.
Bernie, we just have 50 seconds left for the end of the show. It wouldn't be fair to bring a caller on and not have them have time to ask or you answer. Summary thoughts for the day.
Well, here's the thoughts. The president laid out a plan. Some good features to it, and as I've indicated, some features that, in my view, are not so good. I don't like rating the Social Security Trust Fund payroll tax. I'm concerned about what he means by reforms of Medicare and Medicaid. On the other hand, investing in infrastructure, bringing our teachers back is the right thing. Now is the time for the American people to get involved in this debate, to make sure that we pass a significant piece of legislation which begins to put millions of our people back to work.
Get out there, get active, tag, you're it.
That's it.
Bernie, thanks so much for being with us today.